So the Learning Garden is located here in Venice, California, and it started in 2001. It was developed to be a community garden to provide information, plant material, and so on to the local community. Also have events that could be held here for various groups. And we have a number of sections in the Learning Garden. There's a native plant section, there's large vegetable sections, and those are actually used too by the classes here. The horticulture classes have the students working in the garden in the vegetable section. And we have herb garden. There's actually been several different aspects of herb gardens developed here. The Chinese one has been here from the beginning. There was also an Ayurvedic garden and a homeopathic plants garden, a Western herb garden. Those have sort of come and gone. The herb garden, though, as I say, has been here from the very beginning. And the purpose of the Chinese herb garden is to be able to provide information and plant material to both students, the local community, and to growers of plants, other colleges. So we have had some events here where we've given away or sold for very cheap a lot of the herb plants that we have propagated. We've also done exchanges of seeds and plants with some other colleges. We've given some plant material to other growers, and we get sometimes from growers some seeds and plants for our herb garden. And we've done a number of things to try and educate the community as well. And we're hoping to expand that, of course, as time goes on. We are not using this for producing herbs for commercial production. It's a very small space. Basically, you typically need farmland, acres, in order to grow plants enough to produce commercial material. So we use this also particularly frequently for the students that are at Emperor's College, and also Yosan does sometimes use the site as well. And it's a very useful experience. I'll talk about some of the ways that the students can benefit from learning from the herb plants as I go along. But some of the things that they benefit from are learning more about quality, freshness regarding the herbs, about how to identify the dried material, about also the doctrine of signatures, which helps them sometimes connect a form or an appearance of something about the plant to the way that it's used. And it just helps them sometimes remember more about how the plant's used, just because it's another way to get information into their system through other senses. So let's start with one of the plants here. And this is licorice, Chinese licorice. It's Glycyrrhiza urulensis, and it's a very famous plant in Chinese herbal medicine. It's a famous plant in Western herbal medicine. And it's used as a qi tonic. It's used for helping harmonize other herbs in a formula. It's used for helping guide herbs to all the 12 meridians in a formula. It's used for helping to moisten in some aspects of the system. It's also used for clearing heat and toxins. It's a very useful herb, very important herb. The plant runs and spreads throughout the garden. It seems to have a mind of its own, but it doesn't actually end up being a bully. So it's an easy plant to grow. If somebody wanted to harvest it and use it, you probably have a very good chance of getting a lot of material from it, because, as I say, it runs and spreads quite readily. This is a plant people may be familiar with, even who are not aware of Chinese medicine. This is actually burdock. And burdock is the root, but the Chinese actually use the seeds. It's known as Niu Bangzi. And these are the dried seed pods. They're rather nasty. They have all these little sort of stickers on them. But these seeds are what's used for medicine. And it's used for helping to relieve the surface. It's an exterior treating herb for wind heat, typically for sore throats, cough, typical cold and flu symptoms, and it's used also for clearing heat and toxins, moistens the intestines as well. It's a weedy plant, so you have to be very careful about growing this plant because it'll spread everywhere through the seeds. Another neat little plant that we have right here, it's kind of going dormant, but I will separate it here so you can see it a little more clearly. And let me break off a piece of the stem. Since it's already going to go dormant, it doesn't matter. This plant is agrimony. Now, agrimony is actually used in Western herbal medicine too. This is the Asian species, and this is Agrimonia japonica, pilosa, sorry. And we use the leaves and stems of this plant. It's known as Xian Hutsao. It's a great stop bleeding herb, an herb to help with bleeding from pretty much anywhere in the body. And it's also used for treating parasites, and it has a very interesting function too that's used when you have the fresh plant. This is another reason to have fresh plants available here in this country of the Chinese herbs. There's a whole aspect of Chinese herbal medicine that utilizes the plants in their fresh live form. This plant, when used fresh, you can take some of the young leaves, and if you have a patient who's very deficient and weak and they're trying to recover, maybe after an injury or some kind of trauma or surgery, or maybe they're elderly, you can mix this, chop this up like you would spinach with scrambled eggs, kind of egg and Xian Hutsao dish. And it can be used as a food in that way to gently tonify the qi when somebody's too weak to handle really strong qi tonics. So it's a very interesting herb in that regard too. I should probably talk about this one since it's flowering. You might recognize this as a type of mum or chrysanthemum. It is Chrysanthemum indicum, and that's Ye Juhua. It's not the white flowered Juhua, as you can see. We'll have that over in another part of the garden, which I'll show you in a little bit. This one is used for clearing heat and toxins. It's also good for the eyes too, but it's used for clearing heat and toxins primarily. And they use the flowers, and that's the main part of it too, and you typically get them when they're budding like that. But it's interesting to see this because it'll be a comparison to the white flowered chrysanthemum that we have, as I say, over in some other sections. So this plant is actually associated with something that a lot of people would know about, even if they're not knowledgeable about Chinese herbal medicine to much of a degree. It's actually the plant that produces goji berries, or in Chinese herbal medicine we say gochitsa. And it's going dormant now, being that it's November. So it doesn't look too great. It'll come back again in the spring. You can see there's a remnant of one berry here. This is a tiny little berry that's left. Most of them have been picked off already and eaten. They're very tasty. But this plant's really useful for a couple of reasons educationally for the students at Emperor's College. For one thing, it involves an idea known as the doctrine of signatures. The doctrine of signatures says that form and function are linked. This is an idea that's actually been part of the herbal understanding pretty much from any culture that's used substances around them for medicine. So this is a red fruit, a reddish orange fruit. And there's an idea that because this is reddish orange, there's a very good possibility that this will work on the blood, which is also red, and in fact it does. You can look at it from a quantum physics standpoint and say, well, there's a resonance here. Something that's red on this plant is going to have a certain vibrational frequency that's going to be similar to something that's red in some other capacity, such as the blood. And the resonation, the similar resonation, will actually be allowing that substance to be acting on the body in some medicinal way. So that's one thing I can use to help students remember, oh, this herb is a blood tonic, because that's what it is. It's a great blood tonic. It also treats the liver and kidney yin, and it also strengthens the essence. It's a very nourishing, wonderful herb. The other thing that's very useful about this herb educationally, it teaches the students about quality. We also have some other gochitsa plants that are actually a different species, a different variety. And they came from seed, and this one I actually made from a cutting. And the ones from seed are horrible in quality. They taste terrible, they're bitter, they're not what they're supposed to be, which is sweet and somewhat plump. The other ones are very tiny, and worse yet, they're very, very bad tasting. So I can use that to teach the students this is what good quality gochitsa is supposed to be about, and the other gochitsa is poor quality. And that's something that's very valuable for the students to be aware of when they're purchasing herbs or using them with their patients. So these 6 or 7 beds are actually part of the original beds that were created at the beginning of the Learning Garden's start. And we had, of course, a smaller number of herbs in these beds originally, and we've added a number of plants since then, and quite a few of them have taken off and become rather large and sometimes aggressive and invasive. And we have additional beds that are down here. We're using this bed as well with a few plants. We have a number of plants in this bed here. Imu Tsao, a couple of types of baibu.
Okay, can you tell us a little bit about what goes into managing this garden, weekly, daily?
Basically, the process of taking care of this garden primarily, first and foremost, involves watering. Of course, during the summer, the plants are going to need more water when the weather's hotter and drier. People have to be here typically at least 3 times a week, sometimes more, as I say, during the summer, to be able to water enough that the plants will survive and do okay. Weeding is probably the next most important thing. And the weeding is a challenge because it's hard to sometimes have students available regularly that will have enough time out of their schedule with classes and with their personal lives and family and work to be able to be here regularly. Also, you have to be able to train them properly to be able to recognize what are the weeds and what are not weeds, and make sure that you don't pull out anything that's important. So that's also a critical thing. Beyond that, we're trying to develop some money-making process to where we can help get signs built, better signs, more signs, maybe a map that would be a little more informative, and also have a really nice irrigation system so we wouldn't have to rely so much on finding students regularly to be able to water. Those are our main work projects and requirements.
Since the garden began, what do you see as the biggest benefit that this has had for the students?
The biggest benefit that this garden has probably had for the students, at least in my opinion, is helping the students to connect more with the herbs, to have the herbs become something that they identify with and have more personality than what they see in the pharmacy. To me, I equate that situation to how there's kids in the inner city who don't know that when they go into a market and they see meat or vegetables, that it actually came from a live animal or a live plant. There's a disconnect that's there, and it's that way for a lot of students who study Chinese medicine. The herbal medicine was started because people saw these plants and substances around them, and they decided to start trying to use them. Now, there can be controversy and discussions about whether Taoist monks might have been able to sense and feel what these herbs were all about by tasting them or touching them or communicating with their spirits, whatever, or that it was done through trial and error. But the fact is that the live plants that are used for medicine were learned about in their native environment. Now, we can't go to China, at least not readily and easily. So, at least if they're here, we can see what they look like, sort of connect with the plants, and learn about various aspects of the medicine through them.
Where do you see the future of this garden, and why do you feel that it's important to have it available for future generations?
The future of this garden, I think, lies basically in what we've been doing already and just expanding it. I want to see that the garden gets better cared for, that we can put in more plants, that we can educate the public more, and of course our students in the colleges of Oriental medicine. I want to see that improve. I want to see this material spread to more colleges and schools so that all of them can have gardens available. And also it's important, I think, too, something that I think is related to this and might be an outgrowth of it in the future if money is available, would be to have herb sample rooms, which is something that's in every major city of China, and certainly every school of Chinese medicine in China or research institute there typically has that available on their grounds or in another institute in the same city. And that kind of herb sample room will have the whole herb, like uncut sometimes, like the root. It will have adulterants and substitutes and the main true herbs. And so people can go there and they can look at this and learn from it. These are some of the things that I would like to see for the future with this project.